Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you my December book haul, which includes Christmas gifts. So a couple of things. First of all, it's like 9:30 at night, the night before I have to start working again after the Christmas holiday, and I wasn't planning on filming, that's why I don't have any makeup on or anything like that. But I had all of these books all over my desk, and I actually have to work tomorrow, and I don't want to shelve them until I've filmed, because I'll never find them all again. So we're doing a late night for me filming, which is why the lighting's a bit weird. As I said in some other video, I think it was my reading resolutions video, things are not quite back to normal in the I Should Read That studios, but we're working on it. I like rearranged my room that I film in and that I work in and that I read in, and the sort of setup isn't quite right yet, but we're working on it. So all of that aside, let's talk about some books. So I know that I do tend to haul a ton of books every month. It's just a thing that I do. This happens to be a particularly large haul because I am including my Christmas gifts, both from family and from you guys and from friends. Usually I split these out into two separate videos because otherwise it's a lot of books, but I don't have the time and space to do that this time around because I have planned all of my year-end content for January, which is awesome, and adding extra videos would mean that we would be dragging year-end into February, which seems like the point where we need to stop and we need to start talking about other stuff. So I decided to mush these videos together. As per usual, what I'll do is I will split this up into physical books I received from publishers, then I will talk about my NetGalley arcs that I received because apparently publishers were real busy sending out NetGalley stuff in December. Then I'll do wishlist gifts from you guys, and then I will do family gifts. Did I talk about family gifts already? And then I'll do the books that I bought for myself. So get yourself some tea, get comfy, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. I always say that I am going to try to keep it short, and then I forget about that like 2 books in and I start rambling about each book and trying to explain them all really in depth. I'm gonna try to not do that this time because there's a lot of stuff to get through. So I'll give a very, very brief summary of what each book is about, and there will be links to everything down below so you can go ahead and check that out. Also, where available, I will be popping in the platforms for the people who did gift things to me, so you can go ahead and check them out if they have platforms. If there wasn't a note or anything like that, or if I can't find something and you sent me something, give me a shout and I will go ahead and add that. But with all of that aside, let's go ahead and actually talk about some books now. So to start off with physical arcs that I got from publishers, I received 6 books this month. I think there are a couple more that are coming, but post is slow at the moment, and because I was at my parents' house for quite a long time and I am now back, there may be a little bit of lag with some of my books, but if anything arrives like in January that was meant to show up in December, it'll be my January haul. It's fine. So it looks like, as per usual, there are a couple of Orbit books in here, and there are also some other sort of favorite publishers. So I am going to start with the one that I have already read and talked about in my December wrap-up. This is The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. You guys are probably well aware of the fact that Becky Chambers is one of my absolute favorite authors, and I love her books so much. And so I had the opportunity to read this ahead of its February publication date, and I loved it. I thought it was fabulous. I am hopefully going to be doing a dedicated review to this book, so you can keep an eye out for that shortly. But basically this is about kind of like an intergalactic rest stop. It's a planet in which people who are going through various wormholes, changing directions, wherever traveling, can stop, refuel, get snacks, rest, whatever. And so we follow a particular place called the 5 Hop 1 Stop. I'm gonna check and make sure because I always get that wrong. 5 Hop 1 Stop. Yes, that is right. It's the 5 Hop 1 Stop. There's a lot of hyphens in there. And we follow the mother and child who run this particular place. On this particular day, 3 ships are landing, and after they do, disaster strikes, everyone is grounded, and everyone is kind of stuck together with a bunch of strangers that they don't know. This is classic Becky Chambers. This is pure Becky Chambers. If you love her other stuff, you're gonna love this. Like her other books, this is definitely a companion novel. You can dive into this one without having read the others, but because of the connection to the first book, I do think that it would be wise to at least have read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet first. So this comes out from Hodder and Stoughton, I believe. It's on the 12th of February. I will put the date on the screen if that is incorrect, but it comes out in February. You're gonna love it. The next book that I have comes out from Titan Books in January, so you'll be able to get your hands on this very soon. This is Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long. This book follows a priestess of the goddess of war who has the ability to turn her enemies' bones into dust with a scream, which is awesome. And one day she ends up disobeying her goddess by not murdering a traveler who comes through. She's basically kicked out and she has to repent. So she's gonna go find this traveler and sort of get her redemption. However, while she is away, her town is burned to the ground and she is the last of these priestesses, and her path turns to one of revenge. This sounds awesome. I'm really excited for this. I have a feeling this is a debut. Yeah, this is a debut novel, and I love a debut novel. I love discovering new authors, and this is one that I've heard a lot about, and I'm very, very excited to read it. Next up, I have a book that came out last year. It was one of Orbit's debut novels. I was absolutely kicking myself for having not requested this last year because it looks amazing. I just wasn't really in a big sci-fi mood last year, but the opportunity came to remedy that, and I'm so, so glad that it did. This is Nofic Gloss by Issa Hansen. So this follows a character named Kaigen, and his planet is destroyed, his family is murdered, and his only chance for survival is to join this kind of strange ship of aliens, and the ship has like a soul and it's kind of its own little universe. So they are going to go ahead and try to find the people who murdered his family. This is a new space opera. It sounds amazing. The people that I know have read it have absolutely loved it, and it's one I'm really looking forward to. I mentioned in, I think, my reading resolutions video, which I will link up above, I'm really looking forward to diving back into sci-fi next year because with the pandemic and everything, fantasy was my big escape, and I didn't read a lot of sci-fi in 2020, so 2021 is the year of Justine's sci-fi adventures, and this is definitely on the list. And speaking of sci-fi, the next book that I have is Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This comes out, I believe, in early February, again from Orbit Books. They always publish the most amazing stuff, and this looks so incredibly good. So this is basically another space opera, and I believe it follows two characters who are arranged in marriage. The one is kind of like the Emperor's most like disappointing son, and he ends up being sort of betrothed to the prince of a particular planet, one of the new sort of conquered planets in the Empire, in order to strengthen this alliance. However, the prince is a widower and he thinks that his previous husband was murdered, and unfortunately the Emperor's son is on his list of suspects. This looks amazing because if their marriage fails, it could bring down an empire. Oh my god, I'm so excited for this. This is one of my hugely anticipated releases for 2021, and I cannot wait to get started. This is probably going to be my next book, and I'm so excited. Next is one that I feel like a lot of people would be really excited for, but I feel like not a lot of people necessarily know about. This is Winterkeep by Kristen Kishore. This is the fourth book in the Graceling series, which started in 2008 as a beloved YA fantasy series. And until recently, I had no idea there was a fourth book coming out, so this is super, super exciting. I've only read the first one. I've read Graceling, and I read it at my shitty desk job, my very first desk job that I ever had. My boss was awesome, the job sucked, and I just read books constantly, and this is one of them. And I never ended up reading the rest of them because I didn't really get like the concept of companion novels and why we might not necessarily be following the main characters from the first book. So I'm actually rereading the whole series in January, and I'm going to be getting to Winterkeep next, and I'm so pumped. So Winterkeep follows our Princess Bitterblue, presumably many years on, and there has been a new kind of kingdom discovered. And this is sort of a magical place. There are like psychic animals, there's a democracy, which is quite a concept, and it sounds like an amazing place. However, her envoys keep drowning mysteriously, and she gets really fed up. So she, along with some of the other characters I think that we will recognize from other books, decide to go and see what is going on in Winterkeep. This looks great, it looks fabulous. There is a very special place in my heart for Kristen Kashore's books, for the Graceling books, and I'm really pumped for this. This comes out from Glance on the 21st of January, so you will be able to get your hands on it very soon. And the last book that I received from publishers is a little bit different. This is a YA thriller, and it's one I'm very, very curious about. It comes out in February from Penguin. This is Lock the Doors by Vincent Ralph. It looks very, very intriguing. So basically, our main character is Tom, and he and his family have moved into what they think is their dream house. His mom and his stepdad are super thrilled. The family who used to live there moved just around the corner. They seem like a really nice family, but he begins to notice some strange things happening. So there are messages on the walls, traces of locks on bedroom doors, on the outside of the doors instead of on the inside. This looks really, really fun. I'm really looking forward to this. I have mentioned before, I love YA crime and kind of YA thrillers. There's something about those particular books that I feel often appeal to me more than the adult sort of versions, and I think that this is going to be fabulous. I'm really, really excited to read this. Okay, so now we're moving on to some NetGalley books. I'm going to scooch aside a little bit so I can put the covers up for you guys to check out. The very first one that I have to talk about is One Day All of This Will Be Yours by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This comes out in March from Solaris, and it's another one of his sci-fi novellas, and I'm very, very excited for this. So it says here that this is like in the first person, so I'm going to try to paraphrase, but basically there was a causality war. No one knows how it started, and that's kind of the point. So the Time Warriors broke time, but our main character is the one who ended it. Ended the fighting, tied up the damage as much as he could, and then he came here to the end of all and gave himself a mission, which is to make sure that none of this happens again. There's a dinosaur on the cover, which basically makes me really excited. It's also a science fiction book by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which also makes me really excited. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. I'm very, very curious how this is going to be. The next book that I have comes from Tor Books, and this comes out in April, and I'm really excited because it combines two of my favorite things, serial killers and fantasy novels. This is The Helm of Midnight, and this is by Marina Lostetter. So basically, in a sort of heist, a death mask of a famous sort of serial killer is stolen, and it seems as though the kind of spirit of this killer, which is imbibed into this mask, has come back and is starting to kill again. So it is up to Krona Hervarth? I can't say that word. Hervath and her fellow regulators to basically get into the mind of a killer and figure out what's going on. This sounds fabulous. I'm really, really, really happy that I've heard of this because I just have never seen hide nor hair of this book on the bookish internet, and I'm really, really, really pumped for this. I don't think it's being published in the UK, so that's the US publication date. So that may be why I haven't heard about it yet, but it looks so, 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 so good. Another book that comes out in April from Tor Books is Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells. This is another Murderbot novella, and I am so excited. I am planning on catching up with the series. I've read all of the 4 novellas so far. I just need to read Network Effect, which is the full-length novel, in preparation for this book. I'm so pumped. So you probably have a vague idea of what Murderbot is about, but basically it follows a sort of security unit who's sort of like almost like a cyborg made of organic and inorganic parts, and they are bored one day, so they hack this thing called their governor module, which basically regulates their sort of everything, their actions, their emotions. It punishes them. It kind of keeps them in line because these security units are incredibly dangerous otherwise. So Murderbot hacks their governor module and sort of almost like gains sentience and free will, but has to pretend that this is not the case, and all they want to do is watch TV shows and make sure the humans are not, you know, in trouble, but the humans are always in trouble and it's super annoying. These books are so fun, they're clever, they have a great main character, and I absolutely adore them. So I highly recommend the Murderbot series if you haven't read them yet, and if you're all caught up or almost caught up like me, you'll have a new one in April. So next up is another book that comes out from Tor. It's another book that comes out in April, and it's by an author that I really, really love, but sometimes have a tricky relationship with her books. This is Victories Greater Than Death by Charlie Jane Anders. So I really like Charlie Jane Anders' writing style, and I really love her concepts, but sometimes the execution is a little bit off for me. I ended up DNFing The City in the Middle of the Night, which was her Hugo nominated novel last year, because it just didn't click with me, and I liked All the Birds in the Sky, which was her debut novel. So I have really high hopes for this one, and it's a YA book, so it may be a little bit different from those other two. But basically in this, we follow a girl named Tina, and she's never had to worry about being sort of ordinary, you know, an ordinary teenager girl and, you know, beloved daughter. She is actually the secret clone of a famed alien hero who's left on Earth disguised as a human to give the universe another chance to defeat evil. And the way that this will happen is that she is the keeper of an interplanetary sort of rescue beacon. And when this beacon activates, it will be her chance to save all of the worlds, go shooting off into space and having great adventures. However, when the beacon does go off, things do not quite go according to plan, because they never do. I'm really looking forward to this. I think that this has the chance to be a really, really, really fun YA sci-fi novel, which is not something that I often get to read because I feel like often we get YA fantasy over YA sci-fi, so this is going to be a really good one. Another one, Tor Books, April. It's a good month for publishing for Tor. This is Chaos on Catnet by Naomi Kritzer. This is the sequel to Catfishing on Catnet, which was, I think it was the winner of the Young Adult Hugo Award last year. And it's one that I haven't read yet, but it's like literally sat like right behind you guys right now, and it's one I'm really looking forward to. So Catfishing on Catnet follows a girl named Steph, and she and her mother are constantly on the move. They never stay in one place for more than 6 months, so Steph doesn't really have any friends. The one place where she feels really welcome is on Catnet, and Catnet is a online community that's a social media site where people upload cat pictures, which sounds great. So what she doesn't know is that Cheshire Cat, which is the admin of the site, is actually a sentient AI. So when threats from Steph's past begin to catch up with her and surface, and Cheshire Cat's existence is discovered by outsiders, it's up to her and her friends, both online and in real life, to save her. This sounds really, really fun. I'm going to hopefully read the first book in the next month or so that I can be all caught up for Chaos on Catnet. I've heard that this is a really, really, really fun book, so I'm very excited for it. Next up is a book that comes out from Orbit in March. I'm so excited. I only just heard about this, and this is one of those books where I hadn't heard about it, and then I got the email about it, and then suddenly, like, it was popping up everywhere. So this is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This looks fabulous. It's a political fantasy. It's got assassinations, it's got massacres, it's got soldiers and rebellions, and it looks so incredibly fun. So we follow two characters. One is Terrain, who is a soldier. She was sort of stolen as a child and raised to kill and die for her empire. However, she and her company have been sent back to her homeland, and she realizes that her blood ties may be stronger than she thought. So we also have Luca, who needs a turncoat, someone who is desperate enough to sort of tiptoe the line between treason and orders in order to sway the rebels towards peace and help get her uncle off the throne. This sounds so fun. I cannot wait to read this book. It looks like exactly my cup of tea, and I'm so incredibly excited. The next book comes out from Tor in the US and Hachette in the UK, and in the UK it comes out on the 18th of February. This is The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. I have read two of Sarah Gailey's books before. I thought Magic for Liars was okay, had a lot of potential, but it just wasn't quite my cup of tea. However, their novella, Upright Women Wanted, is fabulous. It is so incredibly good and I loved it so much. So I have a lot of excitement for The Echo Wife. I think it's going to be really interesting. The sort of description that I can pull up is very vague, which you guys know I love, but all I really need to know is that this is basically pitched as a cross between Black Mirror and Big Little Lies. So I'm all here for it. Basically, we follow a character named Evelyn Caldwell, and it's meant to be an evening to honor and celebrate her award-winning career-making scientific research. However, Evelyn has other things on her mind. Things like her husband, Nathan, who has left her for a younger, better, newer woman. A woman who is now pregnant, but shouldn't be, and is strikingly familiar. Too familiar to be a coincidence, and a woman that shouldn't exist. This sounds excellent. This sounds really, really, really good. I am so pumped for this one. It's one that is very high on my list of priorities to read this month or in February. Next up is another Tor book. I like Tor, apparently. This comes out in March. This is A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martin. This is the sequel to the much, much, much praised A Memory Called Empire, which ironically is the only one of the Best Novel Hugo nominations that I haven't read, and is indeed the one that actually won. So I really, really, really need to get cracking and read the first book so that I can go ahead and get to the second one. This is apparently quite a dense but rewarding science fiction series. The first book follows basically an ambassador to, I believe, a new area of the galaxy, New Empire, and they are taking the place of the previous ambassador who has died. However, it turns out the previous ambassador may have been murdered, so it's like a murder mystery, it's sapphic, it's sci-fi. Apparently it is phenomenal, and I'm really excited to read it. It just keeps slipping and slipping between the cracks for me, and I really, really need to read it. And now that I have an arc of the second book, I have that pressure on me to go ahead and love this book just as much as everyone else has, because apparently it's amazing. Okay, so now we're moving on to Christmas gifts. This first stack is from my family. A lot of them are from Scottish husband. He does this really cute thing every year where we buy all of our presents and everything is great, and then he starts sweating and he starts panicking and wondering that he didn't maybe get enough presents, and he buys a ton of stuff. So he bought a lot of stuff off of my wish list. The first of those being the third, fourth, and fifth volumes of The Lumberjanes by Noelle Stevenson. I read these in December. You can check out my thoughts in my wrap-up. I love these books. They're basically about a supernatural, almost like a Girl Scout camp, and this group of friends who goes there every year. They're super cute, they're super fun, they're super like quirky, and I just absolutely love them. So I was really, really excited to go ahead and continue on with the series. Apparently there are like a million more, so I am going to be busy for a little while with these. Next up is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I am very, very, very much looking forward to this, with all of the caveats of it's technically true crime, but a lot of the stuff that he says is slightly embellished in this book, so I'm going to be going into it with a grain of salt, but this is a very, very famous and very important book. It sort of follows the 1959 murder of a farmer, his wife, and his children, and the two men who did it. It's supposed to be fabulous. I think they call it narrative nonfiction, so it's super readable and maybe not entirely married to the truth, but I'm very excited to read this. I have been picking up some more true crime books lately, although I'm very, very picky with what I pick up because of some issues that I talk about in previous videos, like sensationalizing and things like that, which this book probably does, but it's such a famous and well-known book that I gotta read it. Then I have another nonfiction book. This is Black and British, A Forgotten History by David Olusoga. I hope you can see this. My light is making it a little bit funky. This is a nonfiction book about sort of Black history in Britain. This is something that I have become very interested in, especially after the events of June of last year. I've been trying to read more fiction by Black authors, but also picking up some nonfiction and kind of educating myself as well. Because I live in Britain, seems like a good idea to learn a little bit about Black British history. So this book stretches all the way back to Roman Britain. It talks about the global slave trade. It talks about the Black British men who fought in wars in Trafalgar Square, and kind of how a lot of this has sort of been erased from history. This looks fabulous. This looks really, really, really good. I read a little bit of it. I snuck a little bit at the table on Christmas Eve, and it looks like it's going to be a really, really excellent read. So I'm very, very much looking forward forward to this. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but I would really like to change that, and so this is perfect. Next is another nonfiction book. This is This Golden Fleece, A Journey Through Britain's Knitted History by Esther Rutter. I actually know Esther. I don't know if she would remember me or not, but I was her intern when I lived in Edinburgh and I was doing my my publishing masters, and she is a fabulous person and I really adore her. We both found out that we knit, although she is a significantly better knitter than I am, and I had heard that she had written this book and I had to get my hands on it. So basically this is her sort of going through various communities in Britain, talking about the history of sort of wool and farming wool, but also these communities that were shaped by knitting and spinning and weaving. This is not something that's going to interest a lot of you, I think, but it's very interesting to me as someone who absolutely loves knitting. I've been knitting for like 14 or 15 years. I really want to get into spinning. We'll see how that goes. And this looks like it's going to be fabulous. I'm really excited for this. Then I have a book I'm so excited for. This is the special edition of Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the illustrated edition. Let me see if I can pull up some of the illustrations. Here we go. Alright, so for example, this is what the illustrations kind of look like. I hope you can see that. I have my glasses on top of my head, so I don't even know if this is in focus or not. But I really, really love the first two books in this trilogy. As I have talked about a million times, I have not actually finished this trilogy because the second one destroyed my heart and soul. So I am planning on rereading the first two. I've been saying it for years, rereading the first two and then finishing up the series. We'll see if it happens, but having a gorgeous illustrated edition is definitely pushing me towards going ahead and picking that up sooner. So this is a very well-known book, but if you are unaware, Assassin's Apprentice follows a young man who is the bastard son of Prince Chivalry, because in this world you're named for kind of the characteristics that your parents hope you will have. Being named Chivalry and having a bastard son is its own set of questions, but he basically grows up in the shadow of the castle, in the shadow of his family, and he trains to become an assassin and he learns to use his own magic. These books are so good. I really love them. I want to read a ton of Robin Hobb. Judith from Dead Good Book Reviews has been reading lots and lots of Robin Hobb, and she's, I think, getting close to like the last trilogy, and seeing her talk about these and seeing so many booktubers talk about these books makes me really, really want to pick them up. So I'm really, really glad that I have this illustrated edition. I'm hopefully going to get my hands on the other ones soon. Then I have a book I've talked about a lot. This is Hollow Empire by Sam Hawke. I received this from my parents and I'm so, so, so happy. I've been holding off on reading this because I figured I was going to be getting a hardback edition of this book for Christmas. So now I can dive in and just have Sam destroy my soul once again. So this is the second book in the Poison Wars. I think it's going to be a duology. And we follow two characters who are brother and sister, Jovan and Kalina, as they, in the first book, try to figure out who murdered their uncle, who murdered the Chancellor, and who is putting the city under siege. It is so fun. It is a fantasy murder mystery with loads of excellent magic and culture, and like it's just so, 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 so good. So I'm very excited for this, which I think takes place 5 years after the first one. So I'm very curious to see how my faves are getting on. Probably not very well. And the last book that I have for family gifts is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang, another book that I have been holding off on because I was hoping to get a physical copy of it for Christmas, but also because my anxiety has been flaring up and reading a book like The Burning God is probably not a good idea right now. This is the third book and final book in the Poppy War trilogy, which is a series I have absolutely loved from when it first came out. I was an early reader of the first book, and it was my best book of 2018. I love the Dragon Republic and I have very high hopes for this one, but these are very, very dark books. So if you haven't read them, which a lot of people are picking them up now, which is awesome, read the content warnings, please. I believe R.F. Kuang has a list of them on her website. If I can find that list, I'll link it down below, but it's, I think, something that's pretty easily Googleable. Googleable? So this is a series that is very much inspired by China's history, and a lot of the stuff that you see happen in these books are drawn from real-life events. So the infamous Chapter 21 from the Poppy War is based on the rape of Nanking. We have Unit 731, we have colonization, we have all of this really, really fascinating but really awful stuff that is very much drawn from real life. And we follow a character named Rin, who's very much an anti-hero, and I love her so much. So basically, in order to escape a sort of arranged forced marriage, because she is a war orphan and her sort of adopted parents are trying to get rid of her, she ends up testing into the premier military academy in the country. And the first half of the Poppy War is basically like, almost like fantasy military school until the middle of the book when war actually breaks out and all of these students actually have to go to war. There's a lot to these books that I'm just not going to go into because it's spoilers for the series, but it is a really, really fabulous series. I'm very much looking forward to this when my brain can handle it. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to wishlist gifts, which came from you guys. So again, I will try to link everyone's platforms down below, and I am so incredibly appreciative. One of my favorite things to do around Christmas time is to do like a wishlist thread on Twitter and send people a bunch of stuff, see people sending each other stuff. It's just the spirit of giving, and I absolutely love it. So again, I'm going to try to run through these very quickly. The first one should be pretty easy, because it's one that I want to know basically nothing about before going in. But this is from my friend Bethan from the Fantasy Inn, who is one of my favorite people in the world, who I have never met. We were going to once and it fell through. But we've been friends for 3 years, and she has excellent taste in books. So this is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. So as I said, it's not really one that I want to know a huge amount about before I go in, but I believe we follow two characters. One is a young man named Memoru, and he has always known his purpose, which is to master his family's fighting techniques, protect the Empire. The time for him to sort of take on everything that he has trained for is coming, but he soon learns that perhaps the Empire he's fighting to protect is built on lies. And then we have a character who I have heard I'm possibly going to really like. I'm nervous saying that before actually reading this, but her name is Misaki, and she is someone who's kind of put away her sword and her passions when she married into this household, and she wants to be a good housewife and mother. However, her son is beginning to ask questions about the outside world, and there's a threat of invasion looming on the horizon, and her husband is getting on her nerves. She sounds amazing. I hope I really like her because I like her already. But this is a series, or a book, that is really, really beloved here on BookTube. It is a self-publishing phenomenon, and I'm really excited to get to this. I have been thinking about this pretty much non-stop ever since I received my copy, so thank you, Bethan. The next book that I have is from my friend Robin. This is Charmed Life by Diana Wynne Jones. If you don't know who she is, which if you are in the US, maybe you don't, she is a much, much, much beloved children's author, and I think this is her best known kind of series. However, she is the author of Howl's Moving Castle, which is of course turned into the Studio Ghibli film. I read this when I was really, really young. One of my friends happened to have a bind-up of the first 3 of these Kristamanchi books, and I blasted through them because there was a cat on the cover. I remember nothing, but I remember really enjoying them, so I'd like to go ahead and get back to these. So in this, we follow siblings Kat and Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is a very, very gifted young witch, and she has ideas to get the better of a great enchanter, and her brother, who has no magical gift, is powerless to stop her. That's pretty much all it says on the back. There's like 2 sentences. I'm really excited. I hope this is accurate because I'm not 100% sure, but I remember at some point there's a magic school in these books that I really, really loved, and I read these not long after I read Harry Potter for the first time, so I am very, very curious to see how I'm gonna like these as an adult, and they sound really, really fun, so thank you, Robin. Okay, so I've stopped filming on the floor specifically for this reason, but I've got Dax here, so excuse the little tail you see flying around. The next book that I have is from my friend Aoife, who is an amazing, amazing booktuber. I'll link her channel down below. This is Cinderella is Dead by Callian Bayron. This is what I'm really excited for. I wasn't initially thinking that this would maybe be something that I was into, but the more and more I've been hearing about it, the more and more I want to read it. Apparently this book is fabulous. So this is set 200 years after Cinderella kind of finds her prince and gets her happily ever after. We follow a girl named Sophia who knows the story of Cinderella by heart, as every girl does. She recites it daily from when she's little to the night that she is sent to the royal ball for choosing. And every girl knows that she has only one chance. The lives of those not chosen by a man at the ball are forfeit. But Sophia doesn't want to be chosen. She doesn't want to go to the ball at all, not when she's afraid the girl she loves may be chosen too. This is unhelpful. This sounds really, really good. I'm so excited to read this. The more and more I've been hearing about it, the more desperate I am to pick it up. The next book that I have is from Laura from Booknomming. This is The Paper Magician by Charlie N. Holmberg. I have heard so many good things about this book and about this series. I think there's a new one coming out soon, and I'm really excited to dive in because it sounds super, super charming. So this book follows a girl who is going to be apprenticed in the art of paper magic, and she is totally brokenhearted when she arrives for her apprenticeship because she wanted to perform metal magic. And once you're kind of bonded to a particular type of magic, that's the only kind of magic you can ever do. So her sort of master magician, Emery, who she is learning under, sort of teaches her these kinds of strange magics with paper, and everything is really lovely until a practicer of dark flesh magic arrives in the cottage and rips out her master's heart. So she has to go and face the evil magician and embark on an unbelievable adventure to find his heart. This sounds wonderful. It sounds so good. I'm really, really, really excited for this one, so thank you so much, Laura. The next book that I have is from my friend Sally, and I'm so excited for this because I've had my eye on this for absolute ages. I love a big chunky fantasy book, and it is one that seems like has some shades of another favorite book of mine. This is The Thousand Deaths of Arter Ben by Tyler Whitesides. So our main character is a thief, and he is sort of a well-practiced thief. He's, you know, mastered sleight of hand, and he's very clever and cunning. And one day he is hired for his most daring ruse, which is to steal from the king, and he knows that he's going to need some help, so he assembles a squad, a dream team of thieves and forgers and disguisers and schemers, and they are going to go ahead and commit this heist. However, it becomes very clear that there is more at stake than fame and glory. This sounds so good. I believe the last book in this trilogy, I think it's a trilogy, just came out, and I'm really excited to dive into this. It sounds like it has a lot of shades of The Lies of Locke Lamora, which is a book that I really, really loved. This book is huge as well, and I haven't really sort of dived into a big fantasy book other than The Way of Kings, which was a reread, so I'm not counting that, in ages, and this looks so much fun. My next book comes from possibly the kindest person on BookTube, but this is from my friend Mary. This is Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Kane. I'm really excited to read this one. However, unfortunately, this book came to my attention because the author very, very tragically passed away recently from cancer, and her sort of updates on Twitter from the end of her life were really, really both heartwarming and heartbreaking to see, and so I wanted to buy some of her books to kind of support her estate. So this is a thriller, which is a little bit different from some of the other stuff that I've read, but I believe Amber from Books of Amber has read this and really enjoyed this. I think it's the start of a series as well, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So in this we follow a woman who's very much an average sort of Midwest housewife. She's got 2 kids, she's got her husband, and she lives a very happy life until there is a car accident that reveals her husband's secret life as a serial killer, which is awesome. So basically her ex is now in jail. She has left him behind. She's moved away to this place called Stillhouse Lake, and she's trying to flee sort of the internet trolls and the people who think that she knew what her husband was up to, which she doesn't. However, a body shows up in the lake, and threatening letters from an all too familiar address begin to show up, and she has to fight against sort of this evil that has come back into her life, protect her identity, and protect her kids. This sounds so good. I'm really excited to read this, and if I really enjoy this, I will definitely pick up more of her books. The next book that I have is from Donna, who is a fantastic book blogger. I am so excited to read this. It's a classic fantasy book, and it was highly recommended to me by my friend Asha, who is another fabulous book blogger. I'll link both of them down below. This is The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia A. McKillop. This follows a young woman named Sybil, and she is the beautiful daughter of a great wizard, and she is raised alone sort of on this mountainside with only her sort of beasts that she summons through wizardry for companions. However, one day a baby is left in the mountains for her to care for, and this awakes new emotions in her, and she is drawn into the human world of love and war. This sounds so good. I have been wanting to read some of Patricia A. McKillop's books for a long time. I believe her Riddle Master series is meant to be really, really good, and this seems like a perfect place to start. Next up, I have a book from my friend Moon, who is a fabulous book blogger. This is A Phoenix First Must Burn, and this is a collection of stories edited by Patrice Caldwell. These are all fantasy stories that are based on Black women, and I believe they're all by Black women, or at least women of color. I'm not 100% sure about that. I have to look into that a little bit more. But I've heard that this is really, really good. I have been wanting to get more into anthologies ever since I read Exhalation by Ted Chiang last year, and absolutely loved it. It kind of changed my mind about anthologies and short stories, so I'm very much looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be so good. My next book is a gift from my friend Lauren, and this was actually recommended to me in the Anna Stevens interview that I did. She said that she was reading this author's new book and just really, really loved it, and she recommended I pick up this one as well. This is Tangles Game by Stuart Hodson. So this follows a woman named Amanda. And yesterday, her life was amazing. She had a perfect credit score, she had a perfect house, she had a perfect job. Today, she is a fugitive. She's the target of an enemy of the system holding information dangerous enough to disrupt the world's all-consuming tech. In a world where an unhackable blockchain links everyone and everything, there is nowhere to run. Another really vague description that I'm totally here for. I'm so excited to read this one. I've kind of had this on my brain ever since Anna mentioned it. Next up is a book from one of my friends who's an amazing, amazing booktuber. This is from Maddie. This is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I talked about this in my January TBR. V.E. Schwab is not always an author that I get on with, but I'm very, very curious about this one. I actually started this in December, but I feel like kind of my time has come to an end with it for now, so I'm going to set it aside and pick it up again when I'm in the mood to pick it up again, because I very much feel like this is a super, super duper mood read for me. But it follows a girl named Addie, who I believe was born in 17th century France, who makes a deal with the devil to sort of live forever and have no responsibilities. But be careful what you wish for, because while she will live forever, she will presumably never die. Every time someone meets her and looks away, she's out of their line of sight, they immediately forget her. So one day she bumps into a boy who remembers her for the first time in several centuries. This sounds really, really good. I love V.E. Schwab's books in theory, but I've heard that this is one that I will actually really enjoy in concept. So I'm very much looking forward to picking this up again. I really enjoyed the writing while I was reading it. It's just something that kind of I slipped out of the mood for. And the very last book that I have that I was gifted is The Dark Tide by Alicia Jasinska. So this came from my friend Imogen, who you should absolutely follow on Twitter, because not only is she an amazing book person, she also fosters kittens. She's always posting kitten pictures, so you should absolutely follow her. I'll post her Twitter down below. But I believe this is a YA fantasy, and it is a sapphic story. In this particular world, boys are sent to the Witch Queen to be sacrificed for kind of the safety of their land every year. One day a girl's brother is chosen to be sacrificed, and she goes in his place. She and the Witch Queen fall in love. It sounds so great. I'm really looking forward to this. This has been on my radar since it came out in, I think, spring of 2020, and I'm really, really happy to have my hands on it now. Okay, so we have one last stack to get through. These are books that I bought for myself. Fortunately, a lot of them can be kind of lumped together. But before we do that, the first book, I think I hauled it in December? I don't really remember. If I hauled this before, I apologize, but I genuinely can't remember. This is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is the first book in her new trilogy, which I'm very, very excited for. I read this in December. I really, really loved it. I talk about it in my wrap-up. You can check out all of my thoughts there. I think I gave it 4.5 or 5 out of 5 stars, but it's a fabulous new fantasy book. Go ahead and check out that video. We are saving some time here. All right, next, I sort of had a moment in lockdown. We were watching The Mandalorian, which I'm only 4 episodes into season 1, so don't spoil anything or I'll come and bite your head off. But I had the overwhelming urge to read a bunch of Star Wars books, despite the fact that I have read some Star Wars books and I don't really like them all that much. But I went on Abe Books and I bought a bunch of Star Wars books. I had a moment, I slipped. It's fine, whatever. So I'm just going to run through all of these. Most of these are the old Legends canon, though we do have 2 like current canon books in here. I'm not going to talk about what these are about because like I can't. You'll kind of get the gist from sort of who they're based on. The first one that I have is X-Wing Rogue Squadron by Michael A. Stackpole. This was really hard to find, but I've heard these are fabulous. They're about the X-Wing fighter pilots. It looks really, really good. This was recommended several times when I asked for people to recommend their favorite Star Wars books on Twitter. Then I have the Han Solo Trilogy by, is it A.C. Crispin? So I don't know which is which, but we have, oh wait, no, it says on the front. So we have The Paradise Snare is the first one. I'm like slowly losing my mind. It's also quite late, so I apologize for how sloppy the end of this video is. The second is The Hutt Gambit, and we have our good friend Boba Fett on the front, so that's quite exciting. And then the last one is Rebel Dawn. I think my sister said that she read these when she was a kid. I must have missed them. She probably got them from the library. But they follow young Han Solo, and they sound really fun. Everyone loves Han Solo. Speaking of how much we all love Han Solo, I have The Courtship of Princess Leia by Dave Wolverton. It's the courtship of Princess Leia. It's her and Han Solo getting married, but I think there's like witches in here somewhere. It looks really, really, really fun. I think she gets tricked into like getting married to someone else and Han Solo freaks out and she goes off to some witch planet or something. It sounds really fun. I'm really looking forward to this one despite the fact that I cannot seem to get a grip on what it's about. Then I have a book from the new canon. This is Alphabet Squadron by Alexander Freed. This looks really, really interesting. So it takes place just after Return of the Jedi, and it follows a character who is one of thousands of Imperial defectors, and I think they end up getting kind of recruited by the new government. Sounds really fun. I think the last one in this trilogy just came out, so if I enjoy it, I will continue on. Then we have our favorite best of the best baddies. I got a bunch of Thrawn books, so I actually read the Thrawn Trilogy, which is Legends, like old canon, but I think they're so beloved that they're kind of basically canon at this point. So this is the series that is super, super influential on the Star Wars universe. It did things like it named Coruscant as a planet where sort of the government is based. Small things like that. I have read all of these, so we have Heir to the Empire, we have Dark Force Rising as the second, and then The Last Command. I got rid of them when we moved from Edinburgh down to Oxford, and I really regretted it because I've been beating Scottish husband over the head to read these for actual years. They're super, super fun. The ending is batshit crazy, but the thing that Timothy Zahn does really, really well is that he captures the voices of these characters that we know and love so much, and the dialogue is so spot on. It also introduces us to our favorite blue baddie, Thrawn, who I think, again, is now canon. I think he's in one of the animated series now. I haven't seen any of them, but I plan to. But he's one of my favorite like villains ever. So I'm really excited to reread these guys. And I have the first of the kind of Thrawn's backstory type books, which is also by Timothy Zahn, and this is part of the new canon. I think this goes into how he was recruited by the Empire and how he became the baddest of all the baddies. I really love him. I'm really excited to see him in some of the shows, and I'm really looking forward to reading more about him. That is it! That is my December book haul. Oh my god, my voice is dying. I now have to shelve all of these books so that I can actually get them like out of the way and I can actually work at my desk tomorrow. So thank you for joining me on this wonderful journey. I kind of lost my mind toward the end, but it was a lot of books to talk about, so I really appreciate you guys sticking around if you did stick around to the end. I would love to know in the comments below if you've read any of these books, if they're in your TBR, if you have a place you'd recommend I start because there's a buttload of stuff here, and also I would love to know if you received any really good books for the holiday season. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.